Okay, things are getting serious. So no cutesy hook question. We are getting into real cult stuff. So this is your serious trigger warning, as this is the point of no return. In light of these stories, a friend once compared my experiences to the Final Fantasy house. For those who don't know, it's an old internet drama story about a cult-style share house where everyone who lived within believed they were the reincarnation of a video game character. My first reaction was to laugh. How could you be reincarnated from someone who never existed? But then I realized it was an apt comparison. The mistake most people make when judging these cult situations is to approach them in a strict, rational manner, which inevitably sinks into an impenetrable fog of mockery and cringe as the viewer is unable to empathize or even begin to understand how anyone could ever believe something so obviously false. All the people involved are deficient, stupid, unlike the reader who is smart and sees things as they really are, as any reasonable person would, which is fine for the casual observer. But for those who want to understand, it requires putting aside your own eyes and stepping away from the safety of distance to partake in the one pastime we all share on this subreddit, to roleplay, to place yourself within the story. I think the best way I could explain it is that in the real world, logic and reason don't exist. They are abstract concepts. You can't touch them, and they can't hurt you. But people and communities and societies they create, they are very real, and they can really hurt you. Fake it until you make it. That's what the world often tells us about developing competence, confidence, and an optimistic mindset. That we can bring our thoughts into the real world by living as if they were real. It's just another type of role-playing, where, like in cults, we go along with what we want to be real, hoping one day our doubts disappear. But what marks a cult is when the roleplay becomes ceaseless, without ever giving us pause to take a breath, until faking it has made it all we can imagine. Our story returns where I am well and truly under Richard's sway, but have gained some measure of autonomy within our shared delusion. Certainly I was confident enough to approach a goth kid in my school, let's call him Trent, and openly started talking about how I was researching magic spells. I think I was trying to show off, but to my surprise, Trent seemed to know exactly what I was talking about and invited me to come into the city that Friday night, to where all the goth kids hung out, and to meet his clan, who also practiced magic. I don't know what instinct or luck guided me, but I had made contact with my second cult. I brought Richard with me, and this was a seminal moment. For the first time, Richard was following me. There, I met a crazy company of black and lace-dressed characters, and Trent brought myself, Richard, and a number of others to go and sit in the city botanical gardens where we could speak in private. There, a girl I shall call Church spoke for at least an hour about vampires, werewolves, shapeshifters, animal souls, subspecies of each, and the eternal battle between good and evil, as well as the need to pick sides before the end times. I saw one gentleman try to turn into a wolf, and in the half-light, surrounded by a group of people who fed upon one another's belief, I thought I saw his hair shimmer and begin to turn gray for just a fleeting moment before my own eyes. It was at this very moment that Richard and I became goth kids. There's one thing they don't tell you about being part of an alternative subculture. Sure, they talk a big game about rejecting the shallow, fashion-obsessed social hierarchies of pop culture, and sure, they sneer at the preppy kids and laugh at the idea of being cheerleaders. But then they spend all their money on clothes and snipe at one another about who has seniority, who is a poser, who is a kindergoth, a baby bat. It's just trading one batch of judgy cool kids for another. Later, it became apparent that Trent and his group were the cool kids, who mostly just took drugs and did messed up stuff to others, while Richard and I had been left in the tender care of Church and her band of outcasts. The funny thing about Church is that no matter how much Trent and his gang messed with her, I witnessed injecting bleach into cheese in her fridge, putting some kind of acid in her shampoo, burning a swastika on her wall by igniting aerosols, and constant use of her name as a mocking insult. She seemed to truly believe that she was in charge, that she, alongside Trent, ran the clan. How to describe the clan? Have you heard of Mind Eyes Theater? It's a live-action role-playing version of the game Vampire the Masquerade. Basically that, without limits, without storytellers, without dice, all-consuming and in real life. Trent, at times, even referred to his first edition Vampire the Masquerade rulebook for inspiration. Church, on the other hand, turned the game into a massive fanfiction event, writing an endless Word document about the endless categories of supernatural beings and secret life of the hidden world, touting it as a Bible for our kind, and herself a prophet. I stopped playing D&D around this time, because what was the point when the LARP never stopped? Church embraced me as what she called a Tylan Lupin, basically an alpha werewolf, while Richard naturally assumed the most powerful beast, the same as Church and Trent, something she called a Tylan Hadora, a supreme being that had all the races within it. This happened shortly after Richard started dating Church. I think he believed this union would make him a leader of the clan, but as far as Trent's cool group was concerned, it just made him Church's pet. We carried razor blades in our wallets and drank one another's blood. Lethargy and withdrawal symptoms occurred if we had not drunk for some time, and I started to interpret growing pains as my body readjusting itself in anticipation of shape-shifting. The end of the world narrative was ever present, but seemed less distressing since we had each other. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to a real group of friends. I also started dating my first ever girlfriend, being what Church called a riddle vampire. We'll call her Happy, because she wasn't. Happy was one of the most disturbed individuals I have ever met in my life. She was a nymphomaniac who once confessed to me having had over 30 partners before me, like a humble brag. She also mentioned I was the first person she had dated under 20 years of age, many in their 30s. We were both 15. Myself, I think I am somewhere on the asexual spectrum, so as you can imagine, this was not a match made in heaven. I did have my first time with Happy, but beyond that, we never really did it that much. I always found excuses not to, so Happy went elsewhere for gratification, cheating on me with basically everyone I knew, and many I didn't. As I discovered her indiscretions, she would weep bitterly, She would tell me to hate her, which I didn't. So I told her I loved her. Then she told me I was the best boyfriend ever, and the cycle would begin again. Happy would make a fake attempt to end her life about once a week, sometimes more. It could be as simple as me walking through a room without saying hello to her on the way to the bathroom. And when I came out, she would be on the balcony threatening to cut her wrists and jump off. I tried to treat her respectfully and tenderly, which was alien to her, which only amplified her claims that she didn't deserve me. Even talking to another girl would set her off on another episode. At least once a week, sometimes more, Happy would ring me in the middle of the night, usually between 1 and 3 in the morning, with a wild story. Men in yellow robes were trying to kidnap her. There were shapeshifters in her house imitating myself and other people she knew. She was experiencing stigmata. She was levitating. She was experiencing past life regression as a little girl who happened to live in my house. It always took at least an hour to talk her down, and often she would announce she was going to end everything and hang up, so that I would ring her back. Happy believed, or seemed to believe, that she was possessed by the devil. She would go into states where she would speak with another voice, and I would have conversations with the devil through her, where I would essentially bargain for her soul. I remember occasions of jumping on my bicycle in the middle of the night after a panicked phone call from her that the devil was coming and I needed to save her. So I would ride to Church's house, where I would find her speaking in tongues on the balcony while Church and Richard did it in the bedroom. I think she was lonely and looking for affection in ways she couldn't express. Years later, I studied the history of demonic possession at university and read about 17th century nuns acting out largely the same symptoms as Happy did. I think it's about forcing the dynamic yet predictable relationship between the possessed and the exorcist. The nun, thrown into a horrible situation, a prisoner of her role in society, acts out in the most alarming ways she can muster and attracts the care and ministrations of a caring male authority. For a while, she gets to see someone fight for her, to know that at least for a moment that the world that has abused her horribly now cares for her. The devil always speaks in loathsome condemnation of the vile and sinful body he has inhabited, but shrinks away in almost reverential fear of the righteous, allowing the exorcist to slowly force victory over evil. It's a violently tender dance of faith and mental illness, easy to dismiss as made-up fantasy, but exhibiting pain and trauma that is very real. But in the end, the exorcist goes home and the nun is locked away once more. For Happy, I believed it was equally a cry for help, and I saw the same role-played tug-of-war for her soul. The devil was all-powerful in his hatred for her sinful weakness, yet was helpless before my denial of him. Years later, a friend showed me the movie Stigmata, and it brought back all my memories of Happy. I realized she was acting out scenes from the movie, almost word for word. That was her contribution to the LARPing game we played. She was Patricia Arquette, and I was Gabriel Bryan. Art imitates life, and life imitates art. Both are keys to unlock many demons within us. Meanwhile, I think Richard hated losing his grip over me and feared me surpassing him in any capacity. He hated Church too, and became progressively more abusive to her. Imitating Trent's bullying, he started going over to her house just to mess with her, taping her cigarettes to the roof and out of reach of her short stature, and so on. Drugs started to creep into our lives, and when Richard was under the influence, the mask fully dropped. All he wanted to do was belittle and demean. It also became apparent that he desperately wanted to sleep with Happy. One Friday night, I got a call from Happy saying she was dumping me. I could hear she was out in public, ringing from a payphone. Then she hung up. I felt confused, a bit hurt, but somehow relieved. Saturday morning, I walked to Richard's house. He took a really long time answering the door, and his clothes were rumpled. "Dude, she broke up with me," I said. "I know, she's here with me," he replied. I pushed into the house, and sure enough, she was in his bed. I talked to them both for a while, eerily calm and about nothing of note. On some level, I enjoyed watching them sweat. Then I said I was done with them, and left the house. I went home, thinking about getting petrol to douse the house and burn it down with both of them inside. I ended up walking for what felt like hours, and I eventually realized I was near the house of a girl I knew. I went and talked to her, and she convinced me not to do anything stupid. So I decided to be patient. I had studied at Richard's feet. I had seen what it was to be a heartless manipulator. I would pretend to forgive him and await my chance to seek revenge. But this was a lie. I didn't have that drive to hurt people within me, though I was quite capable of doing it if it made myself think I didn't care. Just like the false plan to burn them both alive. I was just role-playing. I spent so much time trying to leave my humanity behind, and yet I played out these edgelord melodramas because that's how I thought people acted. Richard, and later teen gothic apathy, taught me that people were cruel and shallow. So I tried to be cruel and shallow until I felt human again. When faced with actually doing something, I walked until I found someone I knew who would talk me out of it, so I could roleplay changing my mind away from immediate revenge and to play the long game instead. I was 16, which on the Dunning-Kruger scale is the peak of confidence versus fleeting experience. As I stated at the outset, logic and reason are not real, and whatever gaps in reasoning occurred through my passage through this story, I intend to show that life continues, irrationally, illogically, and without interruption, even as it careens towards disaster. I've struggled with this half of the story for many years. I remember asking multiple psychologists and even historians, what do you do when the past makes no sense? When it's more like a dream, like a story that no sane person would take as truth. Psychologists offer platitudes of whatever lets me sleep at night, but ironically, I find better answers from historians. History is stranger than fiction. Stories are within us, around us, move unseen through us to guide and predate upon us. They constrict us, and they set us free. Because we want stories. We want to be in them, we want to hear them, so we make stories happen, while we act out the roles we want to see become legend. Life, history, it is all a live-action roleplay. As the bard said, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. We have our entrances and our exits, and one man in his time plays many parts. At the end of it all, is there truly a difference between faking it and making it? There has to be. Irrationally, upon faith alone, I trust that something that is real, even if it is only to tell stories. Safe behind my DM screen, to be in control of reality for a few short hours. to give people the stories that might make them feel whole, loved, accomplished, belonging. To tell stories where we become free. But the final story has yet to be told. My final installment is in regards to my third cult and how I broke free from cults forever. The story of Leo. I know, this is not really an RPG horror story anymore, but I think it's a weird, interesting curiosity. It kinda reminds me of what the D&D panic was all about, but this wasn't caused by playing D&D. Just like they wish to blame video games for mass shooters, it's not about what people play, it's about the environment. Just one last story to wrap this saga up. So what do you all think about this situation?